he hopes Biden stays in the race, because what maybe worrisome for him is if a new person comes in and that totally shakes up the race and everything kind of starts fresh.
So, Jim, how bad is it for Biden, in your view, at the moment? Comes on the back of a day when Nancy Pelosi gave him the lukest of lukewarm endorsements and George Clooney actively calls for him to step down. How bad is it for Biden?
Well, I've been through a number of crises, and this is up there with the best or the worst of them, depending on your perspective. He basically is facing an existential threat to his presidency. I think he understands that. His people do, and this could go either way. I tend to think it'll end with him exiting the race, but it's a little unclear. It's going to take a few more days for sure.
And you've got an idea of one thing he could do. Explain what it is, and it takes you back to your time advising Clinton.
That's right. Well, when I was a spokesman for Bill Clinton, after he left the presidency, he had a serious heart problem. He had to go to the hospital, and he had a kind of emergency heart surgery. And we decided, along with him and Hillary Clinton, to do a news conference the same day, featuring the four doctors who operated on him. And it was carried live on cable TV. You can find it on C-SPAN now. And they went into exhaustive detail about exactly what had happened to him, what they did, and what his prognosis was. And he did it because he saw it as a teaching moment, as an educational opportunity for people to learn about heart disease. And so that was well received, and the operation went well as well. The thought here is that Joe Biden certainly faces a huge question mark about his capacity to lead. He says he can lead. Other people do. A lot of other people don't, including many Americans have concerns. The strongest way to refute or establish he has a problem or refute he has a problem is to engage in a battery of tests at Walter Reed Hospital, and then have the doctors do a news conference and answer all questions. If he passes the test and they testify to that, then I think he goes a long way towards absolving himself of these issues, and he can move forward. And if there is a problem, we all need to know, including him and the American people.
I guess the point is that, as you'll know, there's that saying in PR that if you're explaining, you're losing. And the fact that the president would have to do something like that, the fact that he is compelled to do that because many, many people doubt his cognitive ability, is that not enough to say, time's up? Once you've started down the road of having to have these tests, you're already cooked.
It may well be, and I tend to doubt he will undergo that kind of a test, at least not publicly. And by the way, Donald Trump is of an age where I think the American people should see the results of such testing for him as well, just to make it even-handed. But it's possible that Joe Biden will undergo a more thorough testing privately, and then that perhaps could become the avenue for him to exit. I don't think he wants to be pressured into leaving. He doesn't want to leave because the New York Times or George Clooney says leave. He wants to make his own decision on his own terms. And if the doctors recommend he leave, then that's a stronger prescription.
And how bad is the Clooney kicking? Because what Clooney says, I'm interested in your thoughts as well. Clooney says, I know Biden. I know him well. I know what he was like in 2010. I know what he was like in 2020. This is not the same man. And that is what many people think. And that ultimately is the problem, that people who are close to him, people who even have his best interests at heart, like Clooney, are saying what other people can see it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think politics has a problem with celebrities. I think too many Democrats are too close to too many celebrities. But in this case, he was essentially testifying to what he himself had seen, and it was at odds with what others are trying to claim. So that became itself quite powerful. And certainly he's an avenue to funding for the Democratic Party, and so people will listen to him. I don't think it's determinative, but I think it's influential. I think what Nancy Pelosi said is probably more powerful, because she herself may be trying to establish a glide path to an exit for Joe Biden, and she may have started to blaze that trail today.
What do you make of it, Jim? You've been around Democrats for a long time. You will have seen Biden's performances 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago. What's your view?
Well, I've seen him, up close in the Senate. I worked in the Senate in the '90s, so I would see him up close then. I was with Joe Lieberman at that time. He clearly has aged, and that goes without saying. I've aged too, so it's a human it's a human thing, and it's not bad in itself. But I do think it's concerning. I know some of the people that work closely with him. I haven't talked to them in a long time, so I'm not sure exactly what they're thinking. They're very professional people, and I think they're trying to do the right thing. But ultimately, it's a Joe and Jill Biden decision about what course to take.
And does he have the humility? I mean, can you be president if you have humility? And I wonder if you've climbed that greasy pole and you've become president, maybe you don't have the wherewithal mentally to say to yourself, maybe I'm not the right person. Maybe I should stand down for the good of my party and the good of my country. Maybe if you've got to that position, you just have too much of an ego to do that.
Well, it has happened before. Obviously, Richard Nixon left under considerable duress. He left before he was thrown out, essentially. On the other hand, Lyndon Johnson could have gone through and gotten the nomination, but probably would have lost to Richard Nixon that fall. I think he saw that coming, and he took what I think was a bold step in March of 1968. He didn't have to do it. I remember that night. I'm old enough to remember hearing about it. It was quite shocking, even to a teenager like me. And that was a big move on his part, and I think the right move given his situation. So politicians can rise to the occasion, and I do think he should think about his legacy. He obviously has the legacy of having defeated Donald Trump. But does he want to besmirch that legacy in his own eyes or history's eyes by being defeated by Donald Trump this fall?
Two more questions for you, Jim. One, if you were in the inner circle, if you were advising Biden as you advised Clinton, would you say to him, this is done, this is over?
It's hard to say that kind of thing. I understand, you're working for somebody, you want to support them to the hilt. And frankly, until he makes that decision, you have to put up a bold and brave front, which is what I think they're currently doing. You have to be everywhere, go everywhere, and keep saying you're in 100% until you're not. And because the minute you equivocate, it's over. So they are supporting him in this effort. Although I like to think I would advise him to preserve his legacy, and if you're not up to it for the next 4 years, then you should do the right thing and step aside now.
And just finally, this couldn't be going better for Trump, could it? From that debate onwards, this could not be going better for Trump. Are you worried that whatever happens, either he limps on or he limps out and some unknown comes in with no name recognition and no money behind them? This looks like this is pointing in one direction, doesn't it?
At the current moment, yes. Although I do think he would like Joe Biden to stay in the race, and you see him sort of make reference to that from time to time. In fact, it'll be interesting to watch the convention next week because, normally they'd be spending all that time attacking Joe Biden, but he may not be on the ballot in November. So do they really want to waste their time doing that? So that's going to be a big question for them. So I think he hopes Biden stays in the race because what may be worrisome for him is if a new person comes in and that totally shakes up the race and everything kind of starts fresh.
Yeah, well, if that happens, we will see. I think, and you think probably on balance it will happen. That's probably the next step in this.
I tend to think it will. I don't think it'll happen. Earlier on, I thought it would happen by now, but I was wrong about that. I don't think it'll happen like during the Republican convention, but it could. If it's going to happen, it should be shortly after because you do need time to organize for the Democratic convention.
Jim, fascinating talking to you. It's amazing. I mean, we have our interesting politics over here. I think the next 6 months in America are going to be truly extraordinary. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks so much.